What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Marvel Snap video. And today I want to talk about my top tips to help you reach infinite rank. I have reached infinite rank this season and then the season before that. So I have reached infinite 2 seasons in a row now. I played a little bit of Marvel Snap during the beta, but I didn't really play a lot during the beta. I didn't really get into this game until the global release, which was around October, I believe. So I have gotten infinite the past 2 seasons now. And this is just, my personal opinion. These are my sort of tips, what I think will help you reach infinite. I can't really guarantee that you're going to reach infinite. It really just like comes down to you in the end. But this is what I think has helped me reach infinite. And these are kind of things that I try and keep in mind when I'm playing on the ladder to try and rank up and try and get as many cubes as possible. So let's go ahead and talk about the tips. I think I got at least 5 for you. I might have more. Not sure how long this video is going to be, but let's go ahead and get into my tips for you. So the first tip I have, and if you watch my deck building video, this is actually something I mentioned briefly, but I want to reiterate this again because I think this is something that people might not realize or might not think of at first, but this one is important to me, I think. It's play with the cards that you enjoy. And what I mean by that is just play with the decks that you want to have fun with, because at the end of the day, it's just a game. Like, we really want to play this game to have fun in the end. And sure, we might get caught up in rankings and winning and losing and all that, but at the end of the day, it's just a game. So my piece of advice would be to play with cards that you enjoy, because just because a top deck is the meta deck, the best deck for ladder or whatever, or you see a lot of other people playing a specific deck, they're winning a lot of games with that deck, that doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy playing that deck. I'll give you an example. I know a lot of people like playing Devil Dinosaur, and I might get hate for this, but I think that deck is incredibly boring. Devil Dinosaur is so boring to me personally, and I know it's a good deck. I know it is a very solid deck. It's good for beginners. Like, if someone new was getting into Marvel Snap, I would probably recommend they play Devil Dinosaurs because it's probably like the best beginner-friendly deck to play. But in my opinion, it's just a very boring deck. I don't like playing that personally. I haven't used Devil Dinosaur a whole lot. I'll play with it every now and then, maybe just to kind of mess around with new cards and new strategies, things like that. But for me personally, like, I'm not going to reach infinite with that deck if I'm not having fun with it. A deck that I really like to play personally is Patriot. Now, Patriot is a deck that personally I think is very fun, but you might not think it's fun. I've heard people say Patriot decks are boring because you're playing a bunch of cards with no abilities, and while that's technically correct, I think it's fun. I like seeing, throwing Ultron on the screen and all the little drones flying around. I like hitting the Patriot and then the Mystique to buff all your Squirrels and Misty Knight and Shocker and all that. And so I think Patriot's fun. And I think if I'm having fun with a specific deck, I am going to be playing better with that particular deck and try and craft and improve that deck to be the best version that it could possibly be. Right? Because if I'm playing with a deck that I'm not having fun with, I'm just going to be like, this deck sucks or whatever, and just swap off of it. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean to play a deck for a few games, like 1 or 2 games, and then just drop it if you're losing, right? It takes a long time to really get acquainted with a certain type of deck, because every deck has different play styles, every person has different play styles. A play that I might make that I might think be the best move on turn 6 or whatever, you might see a different play line that could be better than mine. So everyone plays different, everyone has different collections as well. You got to keep that in mind too. So just because this person is saying, oh, this is the best meta deck to climb with, let's say it's like a Sarah deck or whatever, and you don't have Sarah, well, then you got to find something else to play, right? So it really kind of just depends on your preferences and your collection level. Just because someone says it's the best deck in the game or the best deck to help you rank up doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have fun playing that deck. So I think if you're playing a deck that you enjoy playing, you are going to rank up more consistently. And when you're trying out new decks, give it a fair shot. Play a few games with it at least. Don't just drop it after 1 or 2 games, because like I said, it takes a little while to get acquainted with a new deck and kind of try and figure out how it plays. All right, my next piece of advice is to pay attention to who is revealing their cards first. So, Marvel Snap is a unique card game in which most other card games, you're playing, one person takes their turn, the next person takes their turn, back and forth playing cards, right? When Marvel Snap, people play their turns at the same time. However, there is still a reveal order in which who is revealing their cards first, right? So that makes a lot of interactions very important within the game. So you got to keep that in mind. So how can you tell who is revealing first? Well, whoever is winning the game, whoever is winning 2 out of 3 locations is going to reveal first. Or maybe it's tied and one of you is winning 1 location, other opponent is winning 1 location, and then the third location is tied. Then it's going to come down to who has the most points overall, right? But the easiest way to really tell who's revealing first is if you actually look at the player icon and you look at their little like nameplate where their name is, it'll be glowing yellow. So that means that person will reveal first. So take a look at this example actually from one of my recent videos. I was playing against a Thanos deck, right? And so to me, Thanos decks usually they play one of 2 ways, right? They're either like a zoo type of Thanos deck where they buff all the power stones with Khazar, or they're like a Killmonger sort of Thanos deck, right? Because the stones take up a lot of space on the board, so they play Killmonger to destroy the stones. Well, in this scenario, I played Ebony Maw and I was revealing first, right? And it's turn 3, and you know what comes on turn 3? Killmonger. Well, he doesn't always come on turn 3, but he costs 3. You know what I mean. But anyways, Ebony Maw is a very high 1 power, 1 cost card, right? So I want to protect that card with the armor that I have in my hand. Now, since I'm revealing first, I'm going to go ahead and play the armor to protect my Ebony Maw in case he does have Killmonger. And I did, in fact, predict correctly. He did have Killmonger, and I protected my Ebony Maw. But the thing is, if I was revealing second, I would maybe think, okay, well, if he does have Killmonger, my Ebony Maw is just going to die anyways, so maybe I should play something else like Lizard or Scorpion, right? So it's very important to pay attention to who is revealing first. Some other important interactions are also like Shang-Chi and Enchantress. Shang-Chi and Enchantress usually want to reveal second with those, depending on if they have Cosmo or not. So before you play some of your cards, like with big on reveal abilities, just make sure you pay attention to who is revealing first. All right, and the next tip I want to talk about is probably the biggest one. It's when to snap. So a lot of people tell you, oh, you just got to snap better, you got to retreat more. Well, what does that mean exactly, right? So snapping is something that it takes a lot of time to kind of recognize when to snap. So one of the things that helps me recognize when to snap is to identify what type of deck my opponent is playing, right? And the earlier you can do that, then the more earlier you can snap. Now, let's say, for example, I like playing a lot of Sandman decks, right? Sandman is very good against Sarah decks and Silver Surfer decks. So if my opponent is playing a lot of 3-cost cards, then I'm going to snap with if I have Sandman in hand, right? But the thing is, you need to snap before you play that big counter card, because you're going to give your opponent a false sense of security. That way they don't know that you have Sandman, so that way you can pick up 2 cubes instead of 1. So like, for example, let's say on turn 3 I play Maximus and I didn't cancel his ability out. My opponent draws 2 cards, right? And they're playing a Sarah Surfer deck. And they're thinking, oh, wow, this guy just gave me 2 free draws. I just drew my Silver Surfer. I just drew my Brood. It's over for this guy. And they snap. But then you have Sandman in hand, and you go ahead and snap back before you play the Sandman. And then once you drop Sandman, they're going to realize, oh, crap, I'm in a lot of trouble. So they might retreat. They might stay and stick it out, and you win 8 cubes. But even if they do retreat, you're still going to win 4 cubes if both you guys snapped, or 2 if you snapped. So yeah, that is one way to go about it. And another way to kind of go about it is, I have found that the best time to snap is between turn 3 and turn 5. So the reason for that is because by turn 3, you can see all the locations that are revealed, right? So I usually like to wait till at least turn 3 so I can see all the locations before snapping, because let's say the first 2 locations are very good for you, right? But the third one could completely screw you over. It could be like Rickety Bridge or Bar with No Name or some stupid location, right? And it could just screw up your entire game plan completely. So that's why I usually like to wait until turn 3. Now, there might be very, very specific situations where you snap turn 1, turn 2. Some situations could be like TVA. If you have a very good like early game hand for TVA, TVA is going to end the game at turn 4, so you're probably going to snap earlier or retreat earlier if you have a good hand. And I'm going to get into retreating as well after this, but I'm going to talk about snapping first. So TVA is a good example of that, or a good example could be, I believe it's Sakaar. I'll put it on the screen here. The location that puts a random card from your hand onto the board. So let's say it pulls like, I don't know, it pulls like a Infinite for you or whatever, right? And then for them, it pulls like a Sunspot. Like, I'll probably snap turn 1 if I have maybe like a armor on turn 2 to protect that Infinite, right? But again, it kind of depends because, well, let's say it does pull that Infinite, but you don't have armor. Well, you can still kind of get screwed over by Shang-Chi, right? But what if it pulls out one of their big win conditions on turn 1? Let's say it pulls out Silver Surfer and it just buffs nothing on the board. Or it pulls out Mystique, it has nothing to copy. And for you, it pulls out, I don't know, it just pulls out like a Magneto or pulls out a Doctor Doom. Like it pulls out a big card. I'm going to snap on that. And most of the time they'll retreat, which is probably correct to do. But you just take a free cube and you just move on, right? Even if it's just 1 cube, like from a short game like that, like it still counts. It still counts towards your progression. So you really want to snap when you can. And now snapping on turn 6. I feel like this one's a little bit controversial. Some people like to snap on turn 6. Some people don't. I am kind of in the middle. I think I lean a little bit towards... I lean a little bit more towards snapping on turn 6, I think. Like, I don't really have a problem with it. If you're, like, super, super confident that you have a good hand, sometimes you can kind of even play mind games with your opponent a little bit. Maybe just kind of sit there for a little bit, you know, make them think, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to snap. Let me see what they do, right? Or sometimes you can bluff. I've done that a few times. It's a very rare, and I would not recommend do this all the time. Your opponent doesn't know what cards you have in your hand, right? Let's say you're playing a deck, right? Like let's say you're playing like a Leech Leader deck or whatever. You play Leech on turn 5, then it goes to turn 6. But let's say you didn't draw a leader. Maybe you got Subterranean on the board and your opponent was playing Korg and they gave you a bunch of rocks. Sometimes maybe the right thing is to actually bluff and snap and get your opponent to retreat, and you win a couple cubes instead of losing a couple cubes on your own. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that all the time again, but sometimes bluffing might be the best way to sneak a couple extra cubes because your opponent doesn't know what you have in your hand exactly. But then there are times where it's so obvious that you're winning by turn 6. Let's say you're winning all 3 locations and you're just in a really, really good spot. I would actually not snap in that situation because your opponent's just going to retreat. Like, if you're winning all 3 locations and you don't snap by turn 6, they might think, okay, maybe there's a chance I could turn this around, and then they'll stay in the game, right? And then you win 2 cubes instead of 1. But if it's so obvious that you're just way ahead and you snap on turn 6, they're just going to retreat and you're just going to get 1 cube instead of 2, which it's not that big of a deal. But in the end, like 1 cube versus 2 cubes, it does make a difference when you really, get into the thick of it, the thick of grinding. So, yeah, snapping on turn 6, it depends, right? It really depends. Like, maybe I think if you have a good surprise play on turn 6 is a good example when to snap as well, when it's something a little bit less predictable. Let's say you're playing a Heimdall in a non-movement deck, right? That's something that's pretty unpredictable. I think maybe you can snap in that situation. But if you are playing a Heimdall in a move deck, then that is pretty predictable. When people see you playing a move deck, you got multiple man Hulkbuster or Doctor Strange, they're going to expect a turn 6 Heimdall. So in that case, maybe it's better to, just not snap because your turn 6 play is going to be pretty predictable. And another thing to think about when snapping is your hand, right? So let's say Like my recent deck, I used to reach infinite. I used a Sarah Silver Surfer deck. Most of the times, if I had Sarah and Silver Surfer in my hand, I was snapping because those are my two big win conditions, right? And if I had one of those cards, then depending on the situation, I might snap, might not, but I would probably stay in the game. And if I didn't draw either of those cards, I was probably retreating more often. It really kind of depends on your cards, right? And your win conditions. What cards are you looking for? If you have nothing but junk in your hand by turn 6, then get the hell out of there. And it also depends on locations as well. So let's say you're playing a Patriot deck and you see, was it Washington, D.C., right? The location where cards with no abilities have +3 power. You might want to snap on that, to be honest. I like to snap on locations that give me favorable outcomes in that matchup. Let's say I'm playing a 0 deck, Isle of Silence, ongoing effects are disabled. That means my Lizard has no negative effect, my Ebony Maw has no negative effect. Red Skull, like, oh yeah, if I get Isle of Silence and I'm playing a 0 deck, I'm snapping on that so quick. Same thing with like ongoing decks and then, revealed decks, Kamar-Taj, things like that. So pay attention to the locations as well. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about is retreating, which is just as important as snapping, if not even more important, right? You really got to recognize when to retreat. And Marvel Snap's a very unique card game. In most other card games, you lose, that's a bad thing, right? Well, retreating is not the same as losing. It means you made a smart choice and got out of there to lose less cubes than you might have without retreating, right? So the thing is, with Marvel Snap, with climbing, you really want to retreat. I think people say like about, I don't know, 25% of your games or so. I think that sounds about right to me because sometimes you just get unlucky. Sometimes you get unfavorable locations. I'm going to put another example here. I was playing with my Silver Surfer deck a few days ago where I was going up against a discard deck and I didn't draw my two big win conditions, right? Sarah and Silver Surfer. I said, there's no way for me to win this. I am getting out of here. So I am going to retreat and I'm going to lose 1 cube instead of 4, right? So that is very important as well, because think of it this way, right? It doesn't matter about your win rate in Marvel Snap for ranking up. That's something that's unique to Marvel Snap. It's all about your cube rate. And what I mean by that is you want to gain more cubes, then you lose cubes. Simple as that, right? So let's say you win 1 8-cube game, but you lose 7 1-cube games where you retreat all those games. Maybe you got really unlucky. You're like, dang, 7 games in a row and I didn't draw Sarah or whatever. But you get lucky or you have a good game, you win 1 8-cube game, that's still a net positive of 1 cube, even though you won 1 game and lost 7. Just think about that for a second. So yeah, I think it is really important to recognize when you don't have your win conditions in your hand, when you have unfavorable locations. Let's say maybe there's like Sanctum Sanctorum to the right. Your opponent has a claw onto that Sanctum Sanctorum, and you have no way of putting power into there. I would consider retreating, right? Because that location is just an automatic win for them. Again, it also kind of comes down to recognizing what kind of deck your opponent is playing. So you can kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm going to play my She-Hulk on turn 6 in this location. Now, if they have Shang-Chi, then I lose. If they don't, I win. So you really got to try and recognize what kind of deck that your opponent is playing and make decisions based off of that. All right, and the last tip I have for you, if you've played Persona 5, you know what I'm talking about. Take your time. But basically, the grind to infinite, it can be stressful and it could be very long. It takes a long time to get infinite, to be honest. Like, I started this season at rank 70 and I play pretty much every day. I play a lot of Marvel Snap every day, to be honest with you. And still, it took me like a long time to reach infinite. I guess, well, long compared to others, right? Like some people were hitting infinite like within a few days the season came out. For me, it took a couple weeks, but take your time. Don't compare yourself to others. You are your own person. Everyone is different. Everyone has different play styles, different schedules, things like that. So I wouldn't stress too much about trying to hit infinite. Just take your time with it and take breaks often. This might sound kind of silly, but sometimes the tilt is real. When that freaking featured location Altar of Death came out, I got so tilted, like straight up. I was ranked, I think, like 93, and I dropped down to like 84. Like, that location screwed me up so hard, man. Like, I was getting so tilted, but I couldn't stop playing. Well, I could have stopped playing, but I didn't want to, and I should have. But I just made it worse, and I just kept losing and losing and losing. So if you're on a big losing streak or you're starting to get tilted, I would consider just taking a break for a few hours, maybe even a day. Just, I don't know, dude, go do something else. Go play another game. Go take a walk. Go to the gym. Go do whatever. But sometimes you just need to take a break. Like, it can be exhausting mentally. And sometimes you get that FOMO, you get that fear of missing out. You're seeing all these other people. They're like, oh, I got to infinite, man. Yo, check it out. This deck I got to infinite. Look, just don't worry about it. Everyone's different. Take your time. It's gonna be okay, And even if you don't hit infinite rank of this season, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You do you. Honestly, since there's not even like leaderboards or anything like that, like infinite rank, like, really means nothing, to be honest with you. It's just a rank. Like, I guess you get the title and now the new card back that they put out, but that's it, really. It's just a rank at the end of the day. Just because someone's infinite rank doesn't necessarily mean they're like a better player than you or whatever. So if you find yourself on a big losing streak or just getting frustrated, maybe you're losing to too many leader players, I feel you, man. That is so annoying to deal with. I get it. Maybe you're getting unlucky with your draws. Maybe you're getting unlucky with your locations. Just remember, just think of me, think of this video, and just think, oh man, you know what J-Hug said? He said, take your time. Take your time. I'm going to step away for a second. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to go, I don't know, go for a walk, whatever. Come back, walk the dogs, get something to eat, come back. And then you'll get back into the groove of things, right? It's kind of like if you've played the Dark Souls games. I don't know if anyone watching here has played Dark Souls, Elden Ring, whatever. But, sometimes you get into that habit where you're just like, I just want to beat this boss. I just want to beat this boss. And you're staying up all night, staying up to like 3 a.m. or whatever, trying to beat the freaking boss. And at one point you just give up and go to sleep. And then the next morning you go and you play the game and you just beat it on your first try. I've had that happen to me so many times playing Dark Souls or Sekiro or whatever. So sometimes all you need is a break, honestly. And then you come back the next day with a fresh mindset and a positive attitude, and you'll do much better. Sometimes it just works like that. Well, hopefully some of these tips were helpful to you guys, and you can maybe learn something from it and maybe reach infinite. And if not, again, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. At the end of the day, it's just a freaking game, right? So anyways, thanks for watching. If you have any tips that you think might be helpful to others that maybe I missed, make sure to leave a comment so other people can check it out and maybe it'll help them. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. We are almost to 1,000 subscribers. We are so close. We're like 850 last I checked, which is pretty insane because I think it was just at like 800 yesterday, man, or I was like 700 something. So that was pretty insane. Thank you guys so much for showing me support. I really do appreciate it. So help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I would love you so much for that. If you stayed around to the end of this video, the key word for this is going to be take your time. Or it's going to be, yeah. The key phrase is going to be take your time. So if you watch this video to the end, type in take your time in the comments so I know you watched to the end of the video and that you're a real one. And I love you for that. So once again, thanks for watching. Appreciate you. See you in the next one. Later.